On my way to the supermarket, I realized I had forgotten my wallet and had to return home. But through the window, I accidentally overheard a strange conversation between my daughter and my son-in-law. What I heard froze my blood, so I decided to do the unthinkable. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I was halfway to the grocery store when I realized I'd forgotten my wallet. At 63, these little memory lapses weren't unusual, but they still frustrated me. I'd been looking forward to picking up ingredients for Wren's favorite casserole. She and Wade were coming for dinner tonight, and I wanted everything to be perfect. The drive back home felt longer than usual. My mind wandered to how much our weekly dinners meant to me. After losing my husband 5 years ago, these moments with my daughter and son-in-law had become the highlight of my week. Wade wasn't the warmest person, but he made Wren happy, and that was enough for me. I pulled into my driveway and noticed their car was already there. Strange. They weren't supposed to arrive for another 3 hours. Maybe Wren had decided to come early to help with preparations. She'd been doing that more often lately, always asking if I needed assistance with this or that. Part of me appreciated the concern, though another part wondered if she thought I was becoming incapable of managing on my own. I grabbed my house keys and headed for the front door, but then I heard voices coming from the living room window. It was slightly open. I'd been airing out the house earlier. Without thinking, I moved closer to retrieve my wallet quietly, not wanting to interrupt what sounded like an important conversation. "How much longer do you think we'll have to keep this up?" Wade's voice carried a tone I'd never heard before. Impatient, almost disgusted. "I don't know, but we don't have a choice," Wren replied, her voice tight with frustration. "We just have to wait." My hand froze on the door handle. Something about their tone made me step back instead of going inside. "She's getting suspicious, though," Wade continued. "Yesterday she asked me why I was looking through those papers on her desk. What did you tell her? That I was just organizing things for her. But she's not stupid, Wren. She's going to figure out what we're doing." My heart began beating faster. What were they talking about? What papers? "Look," Wren's voice was sharper now. "We've come too far to back out now. Once we get the diagnosis confirmed, everything will be easier." "Diagnosis? What diagnosis?" I pressed myself against the wall beside the window, my mind racing. Had they discovered something about my health that I didn't know? "I just think we should speed things up," Wade said. "The longer we wait, the more chances she has to mess things up for us." "Speed what up?" Wren's tone was warning. "We can't rush this. It has to look natural, or everything falls apart." My legs felt weak. I gripped the windowsill for support, trying to process what I was hearing. Were they talking about me? The way they spoke, with such cold calculation, sent chills down my spine. I know, Wade sighed heavily. "I'm just tired of pretending to care about her every little problem. Do you know she called me yesterday because she couldn't figure out how to adjust the thermostat? I wanted to tell her to figure it out herself." The words hit me like a physical blow. All those times Wade had helped me with small tasks around the house, I'd thought he was being kind. But he'd been pretending? "You need to be more patient," Wren said firmly. "We can't let her suspect anything. Not now. Easy for you to say. You don't have to listen to her stories about the neighbors or her complaints about her back pain every single day." I felt tears burning my eyes. These weren't the voices of two people who cared about me. These were the voices of people who saw me as a burden, an obstacle to something they wanted. "Wade, please, just a little longer. Once the doctor confirms everything, we can move forward with the plan. And you're sure he'll cooperate? He owes me a favor. Besides, it's not like we're asking him to lie. We're just asking him to expedite the process." I couldn't breathe properly. What process? What favor? My mind was spinning with terrible possibilities. Were they talking about having me declared incompetent? Were they planning to put me in a nursing home? "I still think we should have started this months ago," Wade muttered. "The timing had to be right. If we'd moved too fast, she might have gotten a second opinion or involved her lawyer." Lawyer. The word sent another wave of panic through me. Why would they be worried about my lawyer unless they were planning something that would affect my legal affairs? "Fine, but after this weekend I want a timeline. I can't keep pretending much longer." "What's happening this weekend?" Wren asked. "She wants me to help her organize her important documents. Says she wants to make sure everything is in order, just in case." It's perfect timing, actually. My blood ran cold. I had asked Wade to help me organize my papers this Saturday. I'd thought it would be a good opportunity for us to spend time together, and I wanted to make sure my affairs were in order, a responsible thing to do at my age. But now, it sounded sinister, like they were planning to use it for something else entirely. Just be careful what you touch, Wren warned. We can't leave any evidence that we were looking for specific things. Evidence. The word echoed in my mind. Evidence of what? I heard movement inside and quickly stepped away from the window, my heart pounding so hard I was sure they would hear it. I fumbled with my keys, trying to think of what to do. Should I confront them? Should I pretend I hadn't heard anything? Before I could decide, the front door opened. "Mom?" Wren's voice was suddenly bright and cheerful, completely different from the cold tone I'd just heard. "What are you doing out here?" I turned, hoping my face didn't reveal what I'd just heard. "I forgot my wallet. I was just getting ready to come in." Wade appeared behind her, his expression neutral but his eyes watchful. "Everything okay?" "Of course," I managed, forcing a smile. Just one of those senior moments. Wren laughed, but it sounded hollow to my ears now. "Well, come on in. Wade and I decided to come early. We thought we could help you with dinner preparations." As I followed them inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap. Everything looked the same. My familiar living room, the photos on the mantel, the comfortable furniture I'd chosen with my late husband. But nothing felt safe anymore. "So, what were you two talking about?" I asked as casually as I could manage. "Oh, just work stuff," Wade said quickly. "Boring office politics." But I knew that wasn't true. They hadn't been talking about work. They'd been talking about me, about some plan they had, about a diagnosis I apparently needed to receive. As Wren busied herself in the kitchen and Wade settled into my husband's old recliner, I realized that the two people I trusted most in the world were keeping dangerous secrets from me. The next few days passed in a haze of forced normalcy. I went through the motions of my daily routine, watering my garden, reading the morning paper, calling my sister Margaret, but everything felt different now. Every interaction with Wren and Wade was colored by what I'd overheard, every conversation analyzed for hidden meanings. I found myself studying their faces when they thought I wasn't looking, searching for signs of deception. How long had they been pretending? How long had I been blind to what was really happening? 3 days after overhearing their conversation, Wade came by as planned to help me organize my documents. I'd been dreading this moment, but I knew I couldn't cancel without raising suspicion. "Thanks for doing this," I said as I led him to my home office. "I know it's not the most exciting way to spend a Saturday." "No problem at all," Wade replied, but his eyes were already scanning the room, taking inventory of my filing cabinet, my desk, the small safe where I kept my most important papers. I watched him carefully as we began sorting through bank statements and insurance policies. He seemed particularly interested in documents related to my house, my investment accounts, and my will. When he thought I wasn't paying attention, I caught him photographing certain pages with his phone. "Wade, what are you doing?" He looked up, startled. "Oh, just taking pictures of the account numbers so I can help you set up online banking later. Is that okay?" It sounded reasonable, but something about his expression made me doubt him. "That's thoughtful, but I'm not sure I need online banking at my age. Trust me, it'll make everything easier, especially if—" He paused as if catching himself before saying something he shouldn't. "Especially if what?" "Nothing. Just if you ever need help managing things in the future." There it was again. That assumption that I would need help, that I was somehow becoming incapable. But I wasn't. My mind was as sharp as ever, my hands steady, my memory intact despite the occasional forgotten wallet. Later that afternoon, as Wade continued his organizing, I excused myself to make coffee. But instead of going to the kitchen, I crept back to listen outside the office door. I heard him on the phone, speaking in a low voice. "Yeah, I'm here now." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. I got photos of the account statements. The house deed is here too." "What?" "No, I can't take anything now. She's right here." I know. We need to move faster." My hands trembled as I stood there, hearing confirmation of my worst fears. Wade wasn't helping me organize my papers. He was cataloging my assets. I quickly returned to the kitchen and made the coffee. my mind racing. When I brought it to the office, Wade was sitting innocently at my desk, a stack of tax returns in front of him. "Find everything you need?" I asked, setting down his cup. "Yes, your records are very well organized. You should be proud." But his praise felt hollow now. I knew he was studying my financial situation for reasons that had nothing to do with helping me. That evening, after Wade left, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to understand what was happening. I went to my computer and did something I'd never done before. I started researching how to check if someone had been accessing my accounts or tampering with my documents. What I found terrified me. There were articles about financial elder abuse, about family members who gradually took control of their relatives' affairs, stories of people who had their competency questioned, who were declared unable to manage their own lives based on manufactured evidence. The next morning, I called my doctor's office on impulse. "Dr. Martinez's office, this is Lisa." "Hi, this is Sherry Walsh. I was wondering if you could tell me about any recent test results, or if there are any appointments scheduled that I might have forgotten about." There was a pause. "Let me check your file. Mrs. Walsh, there's a note here that your daughter called yesterday asking about scheduling some cognitive assessments. She seemed quite concerned about your memory." My blood went cold. My daughter called about cognitive assessments? Yes. She mentioned some incidents that worried her. She wanted to know what kind of testing we recommend for early dementia screening. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Ren had called my doctor behind my back, asking about dementia testing. She was building a case for my incompetency, creating a paper trail that would support whatever plan they had. The pieces were starting to come together, and the picture they formed made me sick to my stomach. Over the next week, I began to notice other things I'd previously dismissed. Ren had been asking detailed questions about my will, who was the executor, where I kept the original, whether I'd ever considered updating it. She'd suggested I might want to add Wade's name to my bank accounts, just in case something happened. She'd even brought up the idea of putting the house in both our names, for tax purposes. Every suggestion had seemed caring at the time, born from a daughter's natural concern for her aging mother. But now I saw them for what they really were, steps in a carefully orchestrated plan to gain control of my assets. I started keeping a journal, documenting every suspicious conversation, every odd request, every time one of them seemed more interested in my possessions than my well-being. The pattern became undeniable. Then, exactly 1 week after Wade's visit, I received a call from my doctor's office. "Mrs. Walsh, this is Dr. Martinez. I understand your daughter has expressed some concerns about your cognitive function. I'd like to schedule you for a comprehensive evaluation." "What kind of concerns?" She mentioned some memory issues, confusion about finances, difficulty with daily tasks. These are things we should take seriously at your age. But I wasn't confused about my finances. I wasn't having difficulty with daily tasks. My memory was fine. Yet somehow, Ren had convinced my doctor otherwise. "When would you like to schedule this?" I asked, playing along. "How about next Friday at 2 o'clock? "That sounds fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing about this was fine. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at the appointment reminder I'd written down. Next Friday at 2 o'clock, my competency would be evaluated based on lies my daughter had told about me. But why? What did they gain from having me declared incompetent? The answer came to me slowly, piece by piece, as I thought about all the documents Wade had photographed, all the questions Ren had asked about my will and accounts. If I was declared mentally incompetent, they could petition the court to become my legal guardians. They would have control over my finances, my property, my medical decisions. They could put me in a nursing home, sell my house, and manage my assets however they saw fit. And based on the conversation I'd overheard, they already had someone, possibly a doctor, who was willing to help them make this happen. I was trapped in a web of my own daughter's making, and I had less than a week to figure out how to escape it. But as I sat there in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by 40 years of memories in this house, I felt something I hadn't expected. Beneath the fear and betrayal, a cold anger was growing. They thought I was a helpless old woman they could manipulate and control. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I couldn't sleep the night before my scheduled appointment with Dr. Martinez. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined sitting in his office while he asked me questions designed to make me appear confused or incompetent. I wondered what lies Wren had told him, what symptoms she'd fabricated to justify this evaluation. At 3 in the morning, I gave up on sleep and went to my computer. If they were building a case against me, I needed to understand exactly what they were doing. I spent hours researching guardianship laws, competency evaluations, and elder abuse. What I learned made my situation even more terrifying. Once a court declared someone incompetent, reversing that decision was nearly impossible. The appointed guardians had almost unlimited power over their ward's life. They could sell property, move the person to a care facility, and make all medical and financial decisions without consulting the person whose life they were controlling. I was reading about a case similar to mine when I heard footsteps on my front porch. It was barely 6 in the morning. I peered through the curtains and saw Wren's car in my driveway. She had a key, but she'd never used it this early before. I heard the front door open quietly, then Wren's hushed voice. "She's probably still asleep. Let's be quick." My heart pounded as I crept to the top of the stairs. Through the banister, I could see Wren and Wade moving through my living room toward my office. "Did you bring the camera?" Wren whispered. "Yeah, and the scanner app. We can get digital copies of everything without taking the originals." I watched from the shadows as they entered my office. The door was partially open, and I could see them working systematically through my filing cabinet. Wade held documents while Wren photographed them with her phone. "Here's the original will," Wade said quietly. "She never updated it after your dad died." "Perfect. That means I'm still the sole beneficiary. But we need to make sure she doesn't change it before we get guardianship." The words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just planning to control my life. They were planning to inherit everything while I was still alive, trapped in whatever facility they chose for me. "What about the house deed?" Wren asked. "Here it is. Free and clear, worth about $400,000 according to the recent assessment." "Good. We'll need that equity for her care expenses." Wren's tone was businesslike, as if she were discussing a real estate transaction instead of her mother's life. "Care expenses?" Wade chuckled quietly. "You mean our expenses. State facilities are much cheaper than private ones." I gripped the banister so tightly, my knuckles went white. They were planning to put me in a state-run nursing home while using my assets for themselves. "Look at this," Wren said, holding up a document. "She's got over $300,000 in investment accounts, plus the pension and Social Security." "How much does that come to monthly?" "About $8,000 total. More than enough to cover a basic facility and still have plenty left over." They were calculating my worth like livestock at auction. Every asset I'd worked for, every penny I'd saved for my retirement, was being cataloged for their benefit. "Did you get the bank account information?" Wren asked. "Yeah, and I was right about her safety deposit box. She's got it listed on her insurance inventory. We'll need to get access to that too. One thing at a time. First we get the competency ruling, then guardianship, then we can access everything legally." I'd heard enough. I quietly backed away from the stairs and returned to my bedroom, my mind reeling. They had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every kind gesture, every offer to help, every expression of concern had been part of their strategy to position themselves as my caretakers before they became my captors. An hour later, after they'd left, I went downstairs to assess the damage. Everything appeared to be exactly as I'd left it, but I knew they now had copies of every important document I owned. They had mapped out my entire financial life in preparation for taking control of it. I made coffee with trembling hands and tried to think clearly. I had less than 12 hours before my appointment with Dr. Martinez. Whatever I was going to do, I had to do it quickly. First, I called my lawyer's office and left a message requesting an urgent appointment. Then I called my bank and asked about procedures for changing account access. Finally, I did something that felt like a betrayal of everything I'd believed about family. I called my sister, Margaret. "Sherry, it's not even 8 o'clock. Is everything all right? Margaret, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." Over the next 30 minutes, I told my sister everything. The conversation I'd overheard, Wade's suspicious behavior with my documents, Wren's calls to my doctor, and what I'd witnessed that morning. Margaret listened without interruption, her silence more telling than any words. "Oh, honey," she finally said, her voice heavy with sadness. "I was afraid something like this might happen." "What do you mean?" Ren's been asking me questions about you for months, subtle things about your health, your memory, whether I'd noticed any changes. I thought she was just being a concerned daughter. But now, what kind of questions? Whether you'd seemed confused when we talked, if you were managing your bills properly, whether you should still be driving. She even asked if I thought you might need help with daily activities. My stomach clenched. She was building a case. It sounds like it. She was very casual about it. But now I realize she was gathering information to use against you. The betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined possible. Not only had Ren been planning to steal my life, but she'd been recruiting my own sister as an unwitting witness to my supposed decline. Margaret, I need you to do something for me. If anyone asks you about my mental state, I need you to tell them the truth, that I'm completely competent. Of course I will. But Sherry, what are you going to do about today's appointment? I'm going to keep it. But I'm not going alone. After hanging up with Margaret, I called Dr. Martinez's office again. This is Sherry Walsh. I'd like to bring someone with me to my appointment today for moral support. Is that allowed? Of course, Mrs. Walsh. Family members are always welcome. Actually, I'd prefer to bring my attorney. There was a pause. Your attorney? Mrs. Walsh, this is just a routine cognitive assessment. I understand. But given that this evaluation was requested based on concerns I don't share, I'd feel more comfortable having legal representation present. Another pause. Let me check with the doctor and call you back. 20 minutes later, they called to inform me that Dr. Martinez felt it would be best to postpone the evaluation until he could review my file more thoroughly. I smiled grimly as I hung up. Mentioning my attorney had clearly rattled them. If this was truly a routine medical evaluation based on legitimate concerns, why would my doctor be uncomfortable with legal representation? But my small victory was overshadowed by a terrible realization. If they couldn't get their medical evidence through Dr. Martinez, they would find another way. Ren and Wade had too much at stake to give up easily. I spent the rest of the morning securing my affairs as best I could. I moved money from accounts Wade had photographed into new ones he didn't know about. I updated my will to include specific provisions preventing anyone from inheriting while serving as my guardian. I even started the process of setting up a trust that would protect my assets from guardianship abuse. But even as I took these precautions, I knew I was still vulnerable. They had already laid the groundwork for their plan. They had copies of my documents, testimony about my supposed decline, and apparently at least one medical professional willing to help them. The phone rang as I was reviewing the trust documents my lawyer had emailed me. Mom, Ren's voice was bright and cheerful. I heard you postponed your doctor's appointment. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to reschedule for a time when you could come with me. Oh, that's sweet. I was planning to come anyway. I've been so worried about you lately. The lie came so easily to her. Worried about what? You know, little things. You seem more forgetful lately. And last week you seemed confused about your bank statement. I wasn't confused about my bank statement. I'd questioned a charge that turned out to be legitimate, which was exactly what a responsible person should do. But somehow, in Ren's retelling, my prudent financial monitoring had become evidence of cognitive decline. I'm fine, sweetheart, but I appreciate your concern. Mom, I think we should also talk about making things easier for you. Maybe it's time to consider adding my name to your accounts, just in case something happens. There it was, the next step in their plan, delivered with perfect maternal concern. That's something we can discuss, I said noncommittally. Good. I worry about you handling everything alone. But I wasn't alone anymore. I was surrounded by enemies who wore the faces of family, and I was finally awake to the danger I was in. As I hung up the phone, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. This wasn't just about money or property. They were systematically destroying my identity, my independence, my very sense of self. They were turning me into the helpless, confused old woman they needed me to become. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. 2 days after postponing my doctor's appointment, I made a discovery that revealed the true scope of Ren and Wade's deception. I was organizing my mail when I noticed that several pieces were missing, specifically anything from my doctor's office, my bank, or my insurance company. At first, I attributed it to postal service delays, but then I remembered something Wade had said about intercepting correspondence. I called my bank's customer service line and asked about recent statements. Mrs. Walsh, We've been sending your statements to the address you requested, 523 Maple Street. My blood ran cold. I didn't request an address change. I live at 1247 Oak Avenue. Let me check. Yes, the change was requested 3 weeks ago by someone identifying themselves as your daughter, acting under power of attorney. I never gave my daughter power of attorney. There was an uncomfortable pause. Ma'am, I think you need to come in and speak with a manager immediately. At the bank, I learned the full extent of their planning. Someone claiming to be my daughter had submitted forged power of attorney documents, changed my mailing address, and requested detailed financial records. They'd also inquired about adding authorized users to my accounts and transferring funds to a trust account. The documents looked legitimate, the manager explained apologetically. The person who submitted them knew your personal information, social security number, everything. Do you have security footage of who submitted these? We can check. Can you come back tomorrow morning? That evening, I drove to 523 Maple Street, the address my bank statements were being sent to. It was a small office building downtown. I sat in my car across the street and watched. At exactly 6 o'clock, Wade emerged from the building carrying a stack of mail, my mail. I followed him at a distance as he drove to a house I'd never seen before. Not his and Wren's home, but a small rental property on the other side of town. I watched from the corner as he carried the mail inside, where I could see Wren waiting for him. They had established a secret location where they were collecting my correspondence, documents, and who knew what else. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment scheme. This was a carefully orchestrated operation they'd been planning for months. I sat in my car for an hour, watching them through the windows as they sorted through what appeared to be weeks' worth of my mail. I saw them opening envelopes, photographing contents, and filing everything in boxes. They were building a comprehensive file on my life while simultaneously cutting me off from my own information. When I got home, I immediately called my attorney. Paul, it's Sherry Walsh. I need you to listen carefully because I think I'm being victimized by my own family. Paul Hendricks had been my lawyer for 15 years. He'd handled my husband's estate and had known our family through some of our happiest times. What I told him that night shocked him into silence. Sherry, what you're describing sounds like a systematic attempt to gain conservatorship over you. It's more common than you might think, but it's also criminal fraud. What do I do? First, we're going to the bank tomorrow with a notarized statement revoking any unauthorized access to your accounts. Then we're filing a police report about the forged power of attorney documents. But Sherry, you need to understand, if they've been planning this for months, they may have already set other wheels in motion. What do you mean? If they're serious about pursuing guardianship, they'll need medical evidence of your incompetency. If your regular doctor wouldn't cooperate, they might have found someone who will. Paul's words proved prophetic. The next morning, I received a call from a Dr. Patricia Simmons, a geriatric psychiatrist I'd never heard of. Mrs. Walsh, your daughter has scheduled you for a comprehensive cognitive evaluation next Monday. She's expressed serious concerns about your mental state. My daughter has no authority to schedule medical appointments for me. Actually, she presented documentation showing that you've granted her medical power of attorney, another forged document. Dr. Simmons, I've never granted anyone medical power of attorney. Any documents claiming otherwise are fraudulent. There was a long pause. Mrs. Walsh, your daughter was very convincing. She provided specific examples of concerning behavior, forgotten appointments, confusion about medications, difficulty managing finances, all lies. Perhaps we should schedule an appointment so I can evaluate your condition myself. No, thank you. My mental condition is fine, and I have my own physician. But even as I hung up, I knew they would keep trying. They would find doctors, social workers, anyone who might be willing to sign the paperwork they needed. That afternoon, Paul and I went to the police station to file a report about the identity theft and forgery. Detective Maria Santos listened to our story with growing concern. Mrs. Walsh, what you're describing is fairly sophisticated elder fraud. Usually, when family members go to these lengths, there's a significant financial motivation. My estate is worth over $700,000. That explains it. Have you noticed any other suspicious activity? Any changes to your will, insurance policies, property deeds? I thought about Wade's visit to help me organize my documents. They've been photographing all my important papers. We need to move quickly then. If they're planning to file for emergency guardianship, they could have you declared incompetent and institutionalized within days. The detective's words sent a chill through me. How is that possible? Emergency guardianship proceedings can happen very quickly if there's supposedly imminent danger to the person. If they present fake medical evidence that you're a danger to yourself, a judge could grant temporary guardianship while they investigate. But I'm not a danger to myself. No. But if they have a corrupt doctor willing to sign papers saying you are, that might be enough for an emergency order. Paul leaned forward. What can we do to protect her? First, we document everything. Mrs. Walsh, I want you to keep a detailed log of every interaction with your daughter and son-in-law. Record phone calls if possible. Second, we're going to work with your bank to flag your accounts for any suspicious activity. Third, you need to consider staying somewhere they can't find you until we can build a case against them. Stay somewhere else? This is my home. I understand, but if they're moving toward emergency guardianship, they might try to have you involuntarily committed for psychiatric evaluation. Once you're in the system, getting out becomes much harder. The reality of my situation was becoming clear. I wasn't just dealing with family betrayal. I was the target of a criminal conspiracy designed to steal my life savings and my freedom. That evening, I sat in my living room looking at the photos on my mantle, pictures of Wren as a baby, as a child, graduating from college, on her wedding day. When had she become someone capable of such cruelty? When had my love and sacrifice as a mother become nothing more than an obstacle to her greed? My phone rang, interrupting my dark thoughts. Mom? I've been trying to reach you all day. Are you okay? Wren's voice was full of concern, but now I heard the performance in it, the calculated tone designed to make me feel guilty for worrying her. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just been busy. Busy with what? You seemed confused yesterday when we talked about your appointment with Dr. Martinez. There it was again, the subtle suggestion that I was confused, building her narrative of my incompetence. I wasn't confused. I simply decided to postpone it. Mom, we need to talk. I'm worried about you. Wade and I have been discussing it, and we think you might need more help than you're willing to admit. What kind of help? Well, maybe someone to help with daily tasks, managing your medications, keeping track of appointments, nothing major, just support. Support that would give them access to my home, my routine, my personal affairs, everything they needed to build their case. That's very thoughtful, but I'm managing fine on my own. Are you, though? Be honest with me, Mom. Haven't you been feeling overwhelmed lately? No, Wren, I haven't. What about your bills? Are you sure you're keeping track of everything correctly? My bills are current and accurate. And your medications? You're taking them consistently? Yes. Mom, I talked to Mrs. Henderson next door, and she said she saw you looking confused in your garden last week. Mrs. Henderson was 85 and barely left her house. More importantly, she lived on the other side of me from where Wren claimed she'd seen me. Wren, Mrs. Henderson can't see my garden from her house. A pause. Maybe it was Mrs. Thompson then. Another lie. Mrs. Thompson had been visiting her daughter in Florida for the past month. Wren, why are you making up stories about me? I'm not making anything up, Mom. I'm just concerned. Wade and I think you should see someone who specializes in geriatric issues, like Dr. Simmons. Another pause, longer this time. How do you know about Dr. Simmons? She called me. Apparently you scheduled an appointment for me without my permission. Mom, you agreed to see someone. We discussed it. No, we didn't, and you have no authority to make medical decisions for me. Mom, you're getting agitated. This is exactly what I'm worried about. You're not thinking clearly. Her tone had shifted from concern to condescension, as if she were speaking to a child having a tantrum. It was a masterful manipulation. Anything I said to defend myself would be interpreted as further evidence of my instability. I'm thinking very clearly, Wren. Clearly enough to know what you and Wade are really doing. What are we doing, Mom? The question was asked with such innocent confusion that I almost doubted my own perceptions. But I remembered the conversation I'd overheard, the forged documents, the redirected mail, the secret office where they were storing my stolen correspondence. We'll discuss it when you come for dinner on Sunday, I said finally. Okay, Mom. I love you. I love you too. But as I hung up the phone, I realized that love might not be enough to save me from what was coming. They were closing in, and I was running out of time to stop them. I spent the week before Sunday's dinner preparing for what I knew would be the most important performance of my life. With Paul's help, I had installed hidden recording devices throughout my house, legally, since it was my own property. Detective Santos had coached me on how to guide conversations to get the admissions we needed, and my sister Margaret had agreed to be on standby as a witness. But the most crucial element of my plan was something they would never expect. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted, or at least make them think I was. Sunday arrived gray and cold, matching my mood. I spent the morning cooking Ren's favorite meal, just as I had countless times before. But this time, every familiar action felt like a goodbye. I was saying farewell to the illusion that my daughter loved me, to the hope that family meant something more than financial opportunity. Ren and Wade arrived promptly at 5, as they always did. Ren kissed my cheek and complimented the smell of dinner. Wade shook my hand and asked about my week. To any observer, we looked like a normal, loving family gathering for Sunday dinner. "Mom, you look tired," Ren said as we sat down to eat. "Are you sleeping okay?" It was such a simple question, but I heard the trap in it. Any admission of fatigue would become evidence of decline in whatever report they were building. "I've been sleeping fine, but I have been thinking a lot lately." "About what?" Wade asked, cutting his roast with surgical precision. "About getting older, about the future, about how much I rely on both of you." They exchanged a quick glance, so subtle I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching for it. "We're always here for you, Mom," Ren said softly. "Whatever you need." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. I've been realizing that maybe I do need more help than I've been willing to admit." Ren set down her fork, suddenly very attentive. "What kind of help?" "Well, managing my finances has been getting more complicated. All these investment accounts, the house expenses, keeping track of everything. Maybe it would be easier if someone else handled the details." "Mom, we've talked about this before. I'd be happy to help you with your accounts. And my medical appointments have been confusing lately. Different doctors, all these referrals and follow-ups. Maybe I should have someone go with me, help me keep everything straight." Wade leaned forward. "That's very wise, Sherry. It's important to have advocacy in medical situations. I've also been thinking about this house. It's so big for one person and maintaining it is becoming overwhelming. Have you thought about what you might want to do?" Ren asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I don't know. Maybe something smaller, easier to manage. Or maybe even assisted living if I could find the right place." The words tasted like poison in my mouth, but I saw the effect they had on Ren and Wade. They were both trying to hide their excitement, but I could see it in their eyes, the gleam of victory they thought was within reach. "Mom, those are all really important decisions," Ren said. "Maybe we should sit down this week and go through everything together." "I'd like that. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." They both tensed slightly. "Of course," Ren said. "Do you think I'm losing my mind?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I watched their faces carefully, saw the calculations happening behind their eyes. "Mom, why would you ask that?" Ren's voice was gentle, but her expression was guarded. "Because I've been having some strange experiences lately. Forgetting things, getting confused about dates and appointments. Last week, I couldn't remember if I'd paid my electric bill, and I found myself standing in the kitchen not knowing why I'd gone there." None of this was true, but I delivered it with just the right amount of worry and confusion. The recording devices would capture everything, both my fabricated admissions and their reactions to them. "Oh, Mom," Ren reached across the table to take my hand. "Why didn't you tell us you were having these problems? I was embarrassed. I didn't want to worry you, but it's getting worse, and I'm scared." Wade cleared his throat. "Sherry, what you're describing sounds like normal aging, but it's definitely something we should take seriously. Do you think I need to see a specialist? Someone who understands these kinds of problems?" "Actually," Ren said, "I may have already found someone who could help. Dr. Simmons is supposed to be excellent with geriatric issues." "You've been researching doctors for me?" "I've been worried about you for a while. Some of the things you've said and done lately have concerned me. Like what? Ren glanced at Wade, as if seeking permission to continue. Well, last month you called me 3 times in one day asking the same question about your insurance, and when Wade helped you organize your papers, you seemed confused about where things were kept. More lies, delivered with such sincerity that I almost admired her skill. Maybe I should see this Dr. Simmons, I said quietly. I think that would be very wise, Wade said. In fact, I took the liberty of scheduling you an appointment for Tuesday. You already made an appointment? I hope you don't mind. I was just trying to be helpful. We could cancel it if you prefer. No, it's fine. I appreciate you taking care of it. They were practically vibrating with excitement now, thinking they had me exactly where they wanted me. Mom, there's something else we should probably discuss, Ren said carefully. If you are having cognitive issues, we need to make sure your affairs are in order. What do you mean? Well, someone should have legal authority to make decisions for you if you become unable to do so yourself. Power of attorney, that kind of thing. There it was. The real purpose of this dinner, delivered right on schedule. I suppose that makes sense. What would that involve? It's just paperwork, Wade said. It would give us the authority to help you with banking, medical decisions, legal matters, only if you become unable to handle them yourself, of course. And it would protect you, Ren added. If something happened to you, we could make sure your wishes were carried out. My wishes? About your care, your living situation, your finances, all the things we've been talking about. I pretended to consider this, letting the silence stretch until they grew uncomfortable. I trust you both completely, I finally said. If you think it's necessary, then we should do it. Ren's smile was radiant. I'm so glad you're being proactive about this, Mom. It shows how responsible you are. When would we need to take care of this paperwork? Well, if you're comfortable with it, I actually brought some forms with me tonight, Wade said. We could get everything signed and notarized this week. Of course he had. They'd come prepared to close their trap tonight. You brought the forms with you? I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to be prepared in case you decided you were ready to move forward. Wade went to their car and returned with a briefcase. He spread several documents across my dining room table, power of attorney forms, healthcare directives, and what looked like a will amendment. This is more comprehensive than I expected, I said, scanning the papers. We wanted to make sure everything was covered, Ren explained. The healthcare directive lets us make medical decisions if you're incapacitated. The financial power of attorney allows us to handle your banking and investments. And this last document updates your will to make things simpler. I picked up the will amendment and read it carefully. It was exactly what I'd expected. It named Ren as my sole beneficiary and Wade as alternate executor. But more importantly, it included language that would allow them to inherit immediately upon my being declared incompetent, rather than waiting for my death. This seems very thorough, I said. But shouldn't my lawyer review these first? That's up to you, Wade said quickly, but these are standard forms. There's nothing unusual about them, and waiting might not be the best idea, Ren added. If your condition worsens, you might not be able to sign legal documents. They were pressuring me to sign immediately before I could get legal advice or change my mind. The urgency in their voices was barely concealed. I suppose you're right, I said slowly. If something happened to me tomorrow, you'd need these documents to help me. Exactly, Ren said. We're just trying to protect you. I picked up the pen Wade offered me, letting my hand tremble slightly as I held it. Where do I sign? For the next 20 minutes, they guided me through the documents, showing me where to initial and sign. They were patient and encouraging, as if they were helping me with something beneficial rather than participating in my destruction. When I finished signing the last document, Wade carefully collected all the papers and returned them to his briefcase. I'll get these notarized first thing tomorrow morning, he said, and I'll call Dr. Simmons to confirm your Tuesday appointment, Ren added. They were barely containing their triumph. In their minds, they had just secured legal control over my life and assets. All that remained was getting the medical documentation they needed to activate their newly acquired powers. Thank you both for taking care of this, I said. I feel so much better knowing you'll be there to help me. Always, Mom, Ren said, hugging me tightly. We love you so much. But as they prepared to leave, I noticed Wade checking his watch impatiently. Their affection and concern evaporated the moment they thought the business was concluded. We should get going, Wade said. Early day tomorrow. They gathered their coats and headed for the door, their mission accomplished. As I watched them drive away, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and satisfaction. They thought they had won. They thought I was the confused, vulnerable old woman they needed me to be. They had no idea that every word of our conversation had been recorded, that the documents they were so eager to notarize would become evidence of their fraud, and that their victim was far more prepared for this battle than they could possibly imagine. The real trap had been set long before they arrived for dinner, and they had walked into it perfectly. Tuesday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth, as if the world itself was celebrating what was about to unfold. I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the one I'd worn to my husband's funeral, to Wren's wedding, to every important moment that required dignity and strength. Today felt like all of those occasions combined. Paul arrived at 9:30, carrying a briefcase that contained copies of all our evidence, the recorded conversations, documentation of the forged power of attorney, bank records showing the unauthorized address changes, and photographs of Wade collecting my mail from their secret location. "Are you ready for this, Sherry?" he asked as we sat in my living room, waiting for Detective Santos. I've been ready since the moment I heard them talking about getting rid of me. Detective Santos arrived with 2 other officers and a social worker named Janet Morrison. I served coffee in my best china, a detail that wasn't lost on anyone present. A confused, incompetent woman doesn't serve perfectly brewed coffee in matching cups with coordinated napkins. "Mrs. Walsh," Detective Santos began, "we've reviewed all the evidence you've provided. What we're going to do today is execute search warrants for the property on Maple Street and your daughter's home. We're also going to arrest them when they arrive for your supposed appointment with Dr. Simmons. What about the fake doctor? Dr. Simmons is real, but she's been cooperating with us since yesterday. Apparently, your daughter offered her $10,000 to provide a diagnosis of severe dementia without conducting a proper examination. I felt a cold satisfaction at this revelation. Their corruption ran even deeper than I'd suspected. What happens next? You're going to call your daughter and confirm the appointment. Act confused, maybe a little scared. We need them to show up believing everything is going according to plan. At 11 o'clock, I called Wren. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm supposed to see Dr. Simmons today, but I can't remember what time." "Mom, we've been over this. Your appointment is at 2 o'clock. Wade and I are picking you up at 1:30. "Picking me up? I can drive myself." "No, Mom, remember we discussed this. You're not comfortable driving to new places anymore." Another lie for their narrative. "Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm feeling so scattered today." "That's okay, Mom. That's exactly why we're seeing Dr. Simmons. She's going to help you feel better." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable now that I knew what to listen for. "Wren, I'm scared. What if she says something's really wrong with me?" "Don't worry, Mom. Wade and I will take care of everything. No matter what happens, you don't need to worry about anything ever again." The promise sounded loving, but I heard the threat underneath it. No matter what the doctor said, they would be in control of my life from that moment forward. At 1:15, I stationed myself at my front window. Detective Santos and her team were positioned around the neighborhood, waiting. Paul sat with me, both of us silent as we watched for Wren's car. They arrived exactly on time, as they always did. Wren got out first, checking her appearance in the car window. Wade emerged more slowly, carrying what looked like an overnight bag. "The overnight bag troubles me," Paul murmured. "They're probably planning to take me straight to a facility after the appointment," I replied. "No point in bringing me home if I'm never coming back." The doorbell rang, and I took a deep breath. This was it, the final performance. I opened the door to find Wren smiling brightly, but there was something different about her expression. The warmth I'd always seen there, even when it was manufactured, had been replaced by something colder and more calculating. "Hi, Mom. Ready to go?" "I think so. Should I bring anything?" "No. We've got everything you need," Wade said, lifting the overnight bag slightly. As we walked to their car, I noticed Detective Santos's unmarked vehicle parked across the street. Everything was in place. The drive to Dr. Simmons's office was eerily quiet. Usually, Wren filled car rides with chatter about her work, mutual acquaintances, or plans for the week. Today, she stared out the window while Wade focused on driving with unusual intensity. "Are you nervous, Mom?" Wren asked as we pulled into the medical building's parking lot. "A little. What if she wants to put me in a hospital? If that's what's best for you, then that's what we'll do," Wade said firmly. We walked into the building together, my supposed loving family escorting me to what they believed would be my psychiatric evaluation and the beginning of my captivity. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were actually walking into their own trap. Dr. Simmons's waiting room was empty except for the three of us. The receptionist, who I now knew was an undercover officer, greeted us with professional courtesy. "Mrs. Walsh? Dr. Simmons will see you in just a moment." We sat in uncomfortable silence. Wade checked his watch repeatedly while Wren fidgeted with her purse. They were both tense, but I assumed they were nervous about the success of their plan rather than suspicious of potential failure. "Wren Walsh and Wade Mitchell?" The receptionist's voice cut through the quiet. They both looked up, surprised to hear their names. "There are some people here who need to speak with you." Detective Santos and her partner emerged from the inner office, badges visible. "Wren Walsh and Wade Mitchell, you're under arrest for elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy." The next few minutes were a blur of shocked protests, Miranda rights, and handcuffs. Wren's composure cracked completely. "Mom, what's happening? What did you do?" "I protected myself," I said quietly. "Something I should have done months ago." "You set us up? Your own daughter? You were trying to steal my life, Wren. Everything I've worked for, everything I am. Did you really think I would just let that happen?" Wade said nothing as they led him away, but the look he gave me was pure hatred. At least he'd dropped the pretense of caring about me. "Mom, please," Wren called as they put her in the police car. "We can work this out. I'm your daughter." "No," I said, loud enough for her to hear through the window. "A daughter wouldn't do what you did to me." After they were gone, Detective Santos drove me home. We sat in my driveway for a moment, neither of us speaking. "How do you feel?" she asked finally. "Empty," I said honestly, but not in a bad way, like a weight I've been carrying has finally been lifted. "The district attorney thinks we have a strong case. The recordings, the forged documents, the bribery attempt, it's all solid evidence. What happens now? They'll be charged, probably plead out to avoid trial. Wade will likely face more serious charges since he was the one who forged the power of attorney documents. You should prepare yourself for them to try to contact you, to apologize and ask for forgiveness. And if they do, that's up to you. But remember, they weren't sorry until they got caught." That evening, I sat in my living room with Margaret, who had driven over as soon as she heard the news. We looked through old photo albums, stopping at pictures of Wren as a child. "She was such a sweet little girl," Margaret said sadly. "What happened to her?" "I think she was always like this," I replied. "I just refused to see it because I didn't want to believe my own daughter could be capable of such cruelty." "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I considered the question carefully. "I don't know. Right now, I'm just grateful to be free." Over the next few weeks, I began the process of rebuilding my life. I changed all my passwords, opened new bank accounts, and had new locks installed on my house. I also did something I'd been putting off for years. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching financial literacy to seniors. Paul called me with updates on the legal proceedings. Wade had been charged with multiple felonies and was looking at significant prison time. Wren was facing lesser charges but would likely serve at least a year in jail. "She wants to see you," Paul told me during one of our calls. "She's been asking her lawyer to arrange a meeting." "What does she want?" "Probably to apologize, to try to make amends. Her lawyer thinks it might help with sentencing if she shows remorse." "And what do you think I should do?" "That's entirely up to you, Sherry. But remember, you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness, not a second chance, not even a conversation." I thought about it for days. Part of me wanted to see her, to understand how she'd become someone capable of such betrayal, but a larger part of me recognized that seeing her would only reopen wounds that were finally beginning to heal. 3 months after their arrest, I received a letter from Wren. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Mom," it began, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I convinced myself that what we were doing was for your own good, that you needed our help whether you knew it or not. I see now how wrong I was, how much I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you can find peace. The letter was 3 pages long, full of apologies and explanations, and pleas for understanding. I read it twice, then put it in my fireplace and watched it burn. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. Some relationships can't be repaired, no matter how much love once existed between the people involved. Ren had made her choice when she decided to treat me like an obstacle instead of her mother. Now, I was making mine. On my 64th birthday, I threw myself a party. Margaret was there, along with new friends I'd made volunteering, neighbors I'd grown closer to, and Paul with his wife. We ate cake and laughed and celebrated not just my birthday, but my freedom. As I looked around the room at people who genuinely cared about me, who saw value in my company rather than my assets, I realized something important. Family isn't just about blood relationships. Sometimes the people who love you most are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born to. I was still sad about losing Ren, not the woman she'd become, but the daughter I'd thought she was. But that sadness was overshadowed by relief and surprisingly hope. At 64, I was starting over, building a life based on authentic relationships and genuine respect. I was finally free to be myself, without fear of manipulation or betrayal. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.